Hey, what's up, guys? So, today for Fundamental Friday, I wanted to do a little recap slash overview of where I think the market's at fundamentally right now, and what's causing its movements, and what we might see going forward. So, right here is the chart for the British pound, Japanese yen, and the yen, fundamentally is a safe haven currency. So when things are going bad, when investors are scared and fearful, then normally you see that the yen appreciates, as we saw here. Huge flows into the yen, and also some of this was a sell-off for the British pound. Um, However, as of the last 2 to 3 weeks, we've seen investors actually pretty greedy, which is kind of interesting, given businesses are still shut down in most of the world, and especially first world countries. We've seen businesses are shut down, unemployment rate is just skyrocketing. Especially like here in the U.S., which is odd that we're seeing such huge, risk on flows, meaning risk is on, aka investors are being greedy, wanting to make a return on their money instead of just avoiding, I guess, a loss, if that makes sense, which is why they would be fearful. So we've seen that over the last few weeks. In terms of, do I see this thing continuing? It's hard to say. It's hard to say because fundamentally there should be quite a lot of fear in the market right now, and there's not. However, it is always a good idea to go with the trend. It wouldn't be a good idea to keep trying to fight this, keep thinking this thing's headed lower. So honestly, I would say that right now it's probably somewhat more neutral. We're seeing some of the steam, come off of this trend. As you can see, there's not as much volume as there was back here, so there's not as much steam. However, we can see it's above all the moving averages on the 4 hour. So yeah, I would say it's more neutral territory at the moment. We would need a little bit more price action to gauge where the market's at. As of right now, currently, I would say the trend is your friend. Let's just put it that way, because trying to catch the top is usually not a good idea, right? If you short it there, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there, you just keep getting stopped out. That's not fun. So that's what I'm seeing for that. Same thing here for the British pound, Australian dollar. Okay, here we are. Usually the Australian dollar sells off, aka this goes higher when there's a lot of fear, and we can see that here. There's been a nice uptrend. However, recently, same thing. We've seen risk on flows here. This thing is sold off, aka the Australian dollar has seen some buyers. I could see this continuing for a few reasons, but also not. So let me get into that. Right now, currently, we've seen a nice bull run for the pound, the British pound. Virus seems to be stalling. On top of that, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, just got out of the hospital from COVID. He's feeling better, so that obviously helps out the pound. So we could very well see this trend continue if we see risk off flows. So really, a lot of it is just dependent on greed and fear. That was what, as you may or may not have heard before, drives the market, and that is 1000% true. For the most part, greed and fear move the market, and recently we've seen greed is moving the market. You might not think that the S&P 500 has anything to do with trading, the pound and the Australian dollar, but it very much does, because you can get a good picture of investor sentiment from the S&P 500. So actually, sometimes I like to take a look at it to see, and we can see here it's been heading higher. So you can tell that clearly there's not a whole lot of fear. Now, until this thing really starts breaking down and heading lower, I would be cautious. I would be very cautious of trying to catch the bottom or trying to catch the top of these big moves. So I would say right now they're in more neutral territory. Fundamentally, since you can't just go off of what's happening in the world, because as we know, the people who are involved in the markets is what matters. If the people involved in the market don't think it's bad right now and they want to buy up the S&P and they want to sell the yen and buy the Australian dollar, which goes against the fundamentals, you can't argue with that. Your little position, your analysis isn't going to change the market. It's not going to move it, and you're just going to end up losing money, right? And the goal, you might have heard this quote before as well. It's pretty popular in trading. The goal is not to be right. The goal is to make money. So, you can keep fighting this all you want, but at the end of the day, if this thing keeps heading lower, that could have been something you could have caught, but you were very stubborn. So you have to be sort of fluid when it comes to fundamental analysis. You really can't be stuck on one idea for too long if it doesn't work. And you learn that over time. For example, back here, I kept trying to short for some reason. I kept trying to short this, and I just kept getting stopped out. So, that was really, it's not fun. It's not fun to keep getting stopped out. So you realize that you really need the trend to form. You really want it to start heading your way, instead of trying to outsmart the market by catching a top or a bottom, right? At least from my personal experience, that's what I found works best, is going with the trend. But guys, and it's basically the exact same thing for GN, the British pound, New Zealand dollar. We've seen it head up and head down on risk on flows. So I would say basically all of these are in more neutral territory, waiting for a better sense of direction, basically, since this move looks like it might be getting exhausted. This move looks like it might be getting exhausted, right? Huge sell-off. GM is just weird, choppy. I probably wouldn't touch it for a little while. Guys, basically that's where I see the market is at right now. Definitely more neutral, waiting for sentiment to reveal itself, either in a risk on or risk off mode. Right now it's just sitting in between. No one really knows what's going on. No one really wants to fight the uptrend, but at the same time, no one wants to buy, with all this going on. So I really think the best idea would be to just wait for sentiment, wait for, COVID numbers to maybe show a decline or an acceleration, and that'll definitely affect sentiment. So, guys, I hope this helped. I hoped you guys sort of learned how I think about fundamentals. It's not just this data, this news, this, that. A lot of it is also gauging sentiment. So that's a huge part of it, because sentiment drives the market, not necessarily the hard data, the hard facts that fundamental analysis usually goes off of. A lot of it is sentiment. What are other investors thinking? That's a big part of it, and through price action, you can usually most of the time gauge that. You just gotta have experience. You have to really do it over and over and over again to get that experience, to be able to see if something's shifting, if your bias may be going against the herd, and you might need to flip it the opposite way. And a lot of times, actually, through price action, that happens. Like, for example, right here, if you look right here, a lot of people are looking to go short, but given I saw this thing still making higher highs, there seemed to be really heavy rejections. So I was actually looking to take this thing long, and I did, and it worked out very nicely. And a lot of that was just looking at sentiment and seeing, this thing probably was not going to head any lower. and that just comes from experience and time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Fundamental Friday. It's a little different than the ones that I've done in the last few weeks, but I just kind of try to keep it fresh, keep it different, always try to bring some value. So I will see you guys most likely next week. Take it easy, reflect over the weekend. Do your chart markups. For me on the weekends, I like to go through my charts again, and just like clean them up. Maybe I missed something, missed a zone or a trend line, or sometimes I just add some maybe unnecessary ones I shouldn't have, so I just clean it up. But yeah, guys, enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys next week, and stay safe out there.